The iPhone 13 continues to be one of the most impressive iPhones in 2025, and in this video we're going to use the iPhone 13 throughout the day while we talk about the phone, take some photos and videos on the phone, and overall just see how it holds up in 2025. The iPhone 13 was released back in fall 2021, and it still looks and feels very cutting edge as it features the same overall design style as the newer generation iPhone 16, 15, and 14, with the same 6.1-inch display size, the same flat aluminum sides, and the same glass back design. In terms of display tech, the iPhone 13 is held up incredibly well. It features a beautiful OLED panel with a pixel density of 460 pixels per inch, it has a 60Hz display refresh rate, and it has a peak brightness of 800 nits in typical situations. These display specs are almost the exact same as the latest iPhone 16's display specs, the only distinguishable difference being the peak brightness level. The latest 16 having a peak brightness of 1000 nits in typical environments and up to 2000 nits in outdoor sunlight environments, but the only time I noticed the 13 being a bit dimmer is only outside in direct sunlight. The iPhone 13's display is 10 out of 10 for me personally and will be for most people. The only gripes that some people will have with the iPhone 13's display is the fact that it lacks the newer dynamic island pill-shaped cutout to house the front camera, speaker, and other sensors. It has the older notch area to store those. And even though Apple now allows live activities to show and be interacted with via the dynamic island area on the latest iPhones, you could pretty much get the very same experience with live activities on the lock screen on the iPhone 13 here, along with every other iPhone. The iPhone 13's display also lacks a ProMotion 120Hz display refresh rate. It again has a maximum 60Hz display refresh rate, meaning scrolling and animations won't look quite as smooth as they do on Apple's Pro tier iPhones. But again, even the latest standard tier iPhone 16 still has a maximum 60Hz display refresh rate as well. So besides the Pro tier iPhones, the standard tier iPhone line still lacks 120Hz ProMotion. So it's not fair to knock the iPhone 13 specifically for this. So the cameras on the iPhone 13 are quite solid in 2025. On the back, we have two 12-megapixel lenses, one main lens and one ultra-wide lens, and of course we have a front-facing camera, also 12 megapixels. Photos taken with the 13's main lens hold up great in 2025. Apple's image processing is quite impressive. However, something noteworthy to mention is that the newer gen iPhone 15 and iPhone 16 feature 48 megapixel main lenses as opposed to the 12 megapixel main lenses in the iPhone 13 here and on the iPhone 14. So when you zoom in on a photo you've taken, the photos taken on the newer iPhones do look sharper and there is more detail. But it's nothing drastic by any means that's gonna jump out at you per se. Now, the 48 megapixel main lens on the newest iPhones also enables up to 2 times optical zoom on the iPhone 15 and iPhone 16 once again, where the iPhone 13 here and the iPhone 14 don't have any optical zoom levels above the typical 1 times. But you could still get digital 2 times zoom on the iPhone 13 here and the iPhone 14. It just won't be quite as sharp as it is on the iPhone 15 and the iPhone 16. And for those curious, the maximum digital zoom for photos taken on the iPhone 13 here and on the iPhone 14 is 5 times, where on the newer iPhone 15 and iPhone 16 it's 10 times. And ultra-wide shots taken on the iPhone 13 look great, pretty much indistinguishable from Apple's newer iPhones. The front-facing camera on the iPhone 13 is also quite good. It's honestly nothing special on any of these iPhones actually, but they all have what you need for your video calls. In terms of video recording, the iPhone 13 and the iPhone 14, 15, and 16 all shoot at up to 4K 60 frames per second, which has been and still is some of the best looking video in the industry. Apple's processing for video on the iPhone is great, and has been great for long enough that video on every, even semi-recent iPhone is almost indistinguishable for most people. I am quite impressed with the cameras on the iPhone 13, even with the newer iPhone 15 and iPhone 16 having the big upgrade of the new 48 megapixel main lens in comparison to the 12 megapixel main lens in the iPhone 13 here and in the iPhone 14. The iPhone 13 still holds its own impressively well, with the difference for most people still being within the realm of very minor. Man, iPhones these days really hold their value. So the iPhone 13 is powered by the A15 chip with 4 gigs of RAM, and it runs very satisfactory on iOS 18. I barely notice any stuttering or lag opening apps and navigating iOS, and all of the new iOS 18 features work seamlessly. And given Apple's current trajectory of providing iPhones with major software update support for around 6 to 7 years, the iPhone 13 has bare minimum 2 more years of major iOS update support, probably more honestly, making this a great iPhone to hold onto for at least a few more years if you're currently using one, and it also makes it a great option in the used market if you're looking to buy a cheaper used iPhone, as you could get them for around $330 on eBay. The great longevity of iPhones are truly one of their best attributes if you're somebody who likes to hold onto your phone for a good several years. And one factor that's not ideal with the iPhone 13 is the fact that it has a Lightning port for charging and data transfer, which is Apple's proprietary connector that they've used up until the iPhone 15 series, which is when they switched to USB-C. So unfortunately, you don't have the versatility of being able to charge your phone with the same cable you probably use to charge up most other tech in your life, being a USB-C cable like you can on the newer generation iPhone 15 and iPhone 16. It's not a huge deal by any means, but just a minor downside. And it's worth mentioning a couple minor design differentiators between the iPhone 13 and some of the newer iPhones. Of course, the most noticeable and recent of which being the new vertical camera lens orientation on the new iPhone 16, where the iPhone 13 here, in addition to the iPhone 14 and 15, all have horizontal camera orientations. Also, the back glass texture on the iPhone 13 here and on the iPhone 14 is glossy and reflective, where on the newer iPhone 15 and iPhone 16, it's a matte texture. Also, the edges of the iPhone 13 and the iPhone 14, where the glass meets the aluminum, is very squared off, where the newer iPhone 15 and iPhone 16 have a more rounded, curved edge that feels a little smoother in the hand, so a little bit of a different feel. All of this is very minor stuff, in combination with the fact that 99% of people use a case on their iPhone, it's going to matter even less. In terms of battery capacity, the iPhone 13 features a 3,227 mAh battery, which is honestly a pretty similar battery size in comparison to all the newer iPhone generations. However, it's really hard to comment on battery performance with an iPhone like the 13 here that's a good few years old, as most iPhone 13s out there have been circulating in use for some amount of time, which means the condition of the battery in each specific iPhone 13 will vary quite a bit from device to device, purely depending on how many charge cycles the device has been put through, which generally corresponds with how many years of usage the device has been put through. However, I will say though, the iPhone 13 is known for having very good battery performance, and I can attest to that, as long as the battery in your specific iPhone 13 is in decent health. If you're planning on buying one of these used, definitely get one with a minimum of 85% battery health capacity, as an iPhone with a lower battery health than that will have significantly worse battery performance than it did when it was new. So guys, even though this device is turning 4 years old later this year, it's still a rock solid iPhone that still delivers on all of the important fronts of display, cameras, and performance. Again, making this a great iPhone to hold onto for another couple of years if you own one, and also making it a great cheaper option in the used market that you could get for around $330. If you're an iPhone 13 user, let me know your experience with the device in the comments down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and of course, as always, I'll catch you in the next one.